Hello, in this video we're going to learn about how to write a balanced chemical equation. So why do we have to balance chemical equations? The reason we need to balance chemical equations is so that the number and type of atoms that are present in the reactants are the same as those present in the products. And so as a result, this would agree with the law of conservation of mass. Remember that the law of conservation of mass states that in a chemical reaction, mass cannot be created nor destroyed. So the mass of everything before the reaction should equal to the mass of everything after the reaction. The way this would happen is if the number and types of atoms on both the reactants and product side are the same. So let's go over the rules for writing balanced chemical equations. The first thing you want to do is write the skeletal equation. The skeletal equation is just an equation that lists the reactants and the products separated by an arrow without any numbers showing that would balance it. Next thing you want to do is to balance the element that occurs in only one compound on both sides of the equation. Okay, so first you do that. When we balance chemical equations, we add coefficients. We do not change the subscript. Okay, so the coefficient is the number that goes in front of the compound or the substance, whereas the subscript is the number that is after the element symbol. We do not change the subscript because if we change the subscript, then we are actually changing the substance into a new substance. When we change the coefficient, which is the number in the front of the substance, we're changing the number of that substance without changing the identity of it. So in this equation here, you can see that the carbon occurs in only one compound on the reactant side and one compound on the product side. So we start off with the carbon. We could have started off with the hydrogen because it's the same case for the hydrogen. On the left and the right side, it occurs in only one compound. We do not want to start with the oxygen because notice on the product side, the oxygen occurs in two different compounds. So in order to balance the carbon, we put a 2 in front of the carbon. And then when we're ready to balance the hydrogen, there is 6 on the left side. So we put a 3 in front of the H2O. If an element is a free element, on either side of the equation, we balance it last. Here in this equation, the oxygen is a free element. A free element is an element that is not a compound. It occurs all by itself. It's just one type of an element. The reason we balance it last is because once we're ready to balance that, it's not going to affect any of our other elements. So when I balance the oxygen, it's not going to affect the carbon or the hydrogen. Now, if when you try to balance the equation, you end up with a fraction, fractions are not allowed. So we clear these by multiplying the entire equation by the appropriate factor, and that appropriate factor is whatever is in the denominator. So here, after we put a 3 in front of the H2O and 2 in front of the CO2 to balance the hydrogen and the carbon, then we're ready to balance the oxygen. We had 4 oxygen here, plus another 3, that's 7 oxygens. If I put a 7 over 2 in front of the O2, that gives me 7 oxygens. So whenever this free element has a subscript, the denominator here will be whatever the subscript is when it's an odd number that we would need. Okay, so I put a 7 over 2. Fractions are not allowed, so I multiply the entire equation by 2, right, because my denominator here is 2, to get rid of the fractions. So now this C2H6 gets a 2 in front of it. The O2 becomes a 7. Instead of 3 H2O, now we have 6 H2O and 4 CO2s. And our equation has to be in simplest form. For example, if I had here 2, 6, 4, 4 as the coefficients here, I need to reduce this by dividing all of these by 2 because 2 goes into all of them. So then it becomes 1, 3, 2, 2. So even though both of these equations are balanced, this one on the left is not in simplest form, and so we need to simplify it. Right, so now here I have just all the rules we just went over. I put them all together on this slide so that you can look at them. Okay, so first we write the skeletal equation. We balance the element that occurs in only one compound on both sides of the equation first. Last, we balance the free element. If there's any fractions, we get rid of these by multiplying by the appropriate factor, which is the denominator. And if the equation is not in the simplest form, we simplify it. So here are a few practice problems for you to solve, and then on the next slide, you can find the answers. So you can go ahead and pause this video, try these problems on your own, and then check your answers on the next slide. And here are the answers to the problems that were given on the previous slide.